The Two Towers, tonight on the Reedsters Lounge. Stay right here. All right, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Reedsters Lounge. I'm the Reedster. This is the Blondie.
Hello.
And tonight we're going to cover The Two Towers from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And we'll just start right off with, my God, you got Gandalf falling down into the abyss with the Balrog.
The Balrog.
Okay, so Gandalf's falling down inside the mountain there with the Balrog, having his little spat. It's pretty neat how robust our good Gandalf the Grey is. Hand it to him.
Agreed.
Props to the Gandalf.
Oh.
Them lunging down together, going at it, and Gandalf takes a backhand, it looks like, right to the head.
Yeah.
All right, I'm assuming the Balrog is pretty strong. Not to mention he's like 1,000 degrees. And Gandalf took that blow pretty well.
That he did.
I'm cool with, Gandalf being able to do that. But, I really want consistency. And I just don't understand why one moment our wizards seem to be all-powerful. The next moment they're as fragile as humans. In retrospect, that's just one of the many things. I mean, at the time, it was all like, ooh and ah. I loved it, and I still do. But, we get to watch it a whole bunch of times now, many years removed. And it just begs questions like, how can he take that kind of abuse from the Balrog? There's probably perfectly good explanations for it all, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah, I would imagine. There's certain things that they can do at certain times, and then certain things that they can't do at certain times. So it makes them seem like they're really powerful, but then, in hindsight, they're really, I mean, they are, but they're limited, is my guess. To rules, restrictions, what they can and cannot do.
That's right. They should just, do a crawl of what these wizards can and cannot do at least once at the beginning of the movie, right? I don't know.
Either way, it was really cool looking, and I loved the way that they did the Balrog, how they did the makeup on them, the overall, artistry. I thought that was really good. When I first seen it, I was pretty fascinated with the Balrog.
Oh, me too.
I thought that, Peter.
Cottontail? Hopping down the bun trail. Hippity hopping, each its own. And so then they plunge down into the murky waters below.
And that was below Moria, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then the fight takes us to a mountaintop of sorts, of some kind of structure. You remember that scene?
Yeah.
And that's when we get the infamous Thor maneuver from Gandalf.
Yeah, with the lightning bolt that he comes out of his sword when he raises it in the air at the Balrog.
Very cool. However, the question I have is where's all that cool stuff later? Plenty of opportunity. I don't know. Cool stuff. Keep it coming.
Oh, totally agree.
But yeah, he does a Thor maneuver, somehow calls lightning to his sword blade, and with one thrust to the chest, ends the Balrog.
Yeah. Which makes no sense because, in the Fellowship, he's scared of the Balrog and all this and all that, but then I guess deep down inside of him, he brings the power for defeation.
Well, at that point, though, it's like he's going to die or it's going to die, so there ain't no point being scared now.
Yeah. One of them's going to go. So anyhow, after that, then it ends up going on to Frodo and Sam on the, path to Mordor, and they realize Gollum's stalking them. He's,
I wonder if they meant he smelt or it just smelt near there, right? Because remember,
oh no, he
Sam.
said it.
Sam says, something about a foul stench in the air.
Yeah, it smelled like a bog nearby. What I thought, well...
Can you smell it? And Frodo's like,
yeah.
Yes, Sam, I can smell it. And then there's that long pause, and then Frodo says, we're not alone.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Is that a reference to Gollum really smells that bad, or do you think it was just the area in which
I think it was just the area. Because they were getting closer and closer to Mordor.
Stop hating the Gollum. Why'd they have to put that right there with, we're not alone?
Although they could have meant it for Gollum, but, they would have kept mentioning that the whole time that they were with Gollum, so.
And then where we head off to?
Well, then they get into a fight with Gollum.
They pretend they're sleeping.
And Gollum sneaks down and attacks them, and they're ready for the fight. And then they, tie him up with the elven rope that Sam was given by the elves, and Gollum, he's begging for, his life, saying, don't tie me up, that'll kill me, and so, he's screaming and hollering and making all kinds of ruckus, which was drawing major attention to them.
Of what? I have no idea. I didn't see anything around.
But they were afraid that, the orcs, somewhere in the distance, would have heard.
Aragorn's head's planted in the rock, and he says, their pace is quickened. They must have picked up our scent. And, many years later, then I get to wonder to myself, like, do you realize that they were many miles away, and those rocks somehow would have had to have been connected more than just by earth alone? Because soil gives a lot. And over miles, that should have buffered out a lot. So there had to have been rocks way underneath that were still connected that would give you that vibration to cut that far across. And how incredibly sensitive Aragorn's hearing must have been to pick that up. And for him to have sensitive hearing to such a degree to pick that up, he would have been absolutely deaf for everything else.
Yeah. You would think so. That's like a cat's hearing. That would be really... Yeah.
Well, then there was that little part after they must have picked up her scent. What is it? What do you smell? Man flesh. They must have picked up her trail. Then it cuts to Aragorn putting his head down to the rock, and that happens.
Okay.
And then it gets to where the Uruk-hai are running in this very small, like ravine, rocks on one side, hill on the other, and we get our first close-up look of the abducted Merry and Pippin on the backs of two Uruk-hai.
Oh yeah, that's right. And Merry pretends to be sick, and it was Pippin that was concerned about him, so he says about giving, to the Uruk-hai, giving Merry a drink, and it was blood or something coming out of that.
Which you can all see with the extended cut. That's not in the theatrical version.
No.
It's easy to get confused because we've grown to love the extended cuts.
Yeah. So anyhow, then, was it Pippin?
The famous scene in the theatrical version there was no discussion between the two. It was just Pippin taking off his brooch, given to him by the elves, to let his crew know that, you're going the right way.
Yeah.
But it was definitely Legolas who hollered back to us, stumbling over himself, Gimli leading up the rear, saying, "Come, Gimli! We're gaining on them!"
Yeah.
But that was a very priceless moment. This, by the way, I think is the first when it was a pretty big deal at the time. They were introducing some more humor to the movie. It wasn't like that in the first one. There was some funny moments in the first one. But this is the first one where our main characters were taking a moment to throw in these little things that were meant to be serious but light funny.
Right.
Which at the time was kind of different. I mean, for argument's sake, look at Marvel movies now. They're throwing them in there.
Oh, constantly, back to back.
Yeah, but when the Two Towers was first coming out, that wasn't very normal.
Right.
But a very welcome thing. Obviously, it worked well with a lot of people because they're still doing it to this day. And a lot of people argue they're doing it too much.
Yeah, like for instance, when they climb the Truebeard and, Mary tells Pippin about, how they heard stories of the trees, coming to life and whatnot. They run into the forest and they climb a tree because of the orc is after them, and they climb up into the tree, and Pippin's face whenever Treebeard opens his eyes, makes a grunt sound and opens his eyes. Pippin's face was just immaculate. Loved it. Well, Aragorn asks Legolas, what does your elven eye see? And he says that they're taking the hobbits to Isengard.
The infamous viral moment that someone looped for I don't know how long, but it turned into a 10-hour loop of mostly Legolas saying, "We're taking the hobbits to Isengard."
And turn into a song.
And, I mean, there's a little bit more of clips in it than that, but the bulk, and it was so crazy famous for a while.
Yeah.
That was definitely worth mentioning. That was a good call. Yeah, that was, I mean, unbeknownst to us at the time, but it wasn't short thereafter someone came out with that gem. And in one of the blogs of The Hobbit, this was one of the ones that Legolas was making a return in, and he has like a tablet or a phone or something, and it's playing that video, and then he's singing right along with it. That was priceless, because everyone took it in good spirits. I mean, it was just not only the fans loving the content, you could easily take that the wrong way, but even the people that were involved in it and the creators recognized it, and everybody was just having fun with it together.
Yeah.
And that is real rare today.
Yeah.
It was
pretty special.
Yeah, it was neat then, but it is very special now. I can't put a price on that. That was great.
I agree.
Then there was a moment where at nighttime, and Merry and Pippin were tossed down because the Uruk-hai and the orcs wanted to take a break.
Oh yeah, and then they want to eat the hobbits.
But yeah, basically they were all agreeing they were hungry and that they didn't have much to eat. And then they get into a physical fight over whether or not they can dice up one of the hobbits for some meat.
Yeah. Which anyhow, how the Uruk-hai was given strict orders not to let the hobbits get spoiled because they have something of great value. Yep.
And that's when the Rohirrim come in and spoiled the orcs and Uruk-hai's plans. That was a good scene. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that was pretty good, yeah. What I thought was thrown off by is whenever they were done and they stuck the Uruk-hai's heads on the stick with the tongue sticking out. I was surprised whenever I seen that the very first time. I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty graphic.
I couldn't believe that they did that. I was like, wow.
But back to the fight. I was surprised that even though they were very tired, they ran for I don't know how long, the Uruk-hai and the orcs, that they didn't put up a little bit more of a fight. Now I know cavalrymen, soldiers on horseback have a distinct advantage against foot soldiers and everything, but still these are Uruk-hai. They're not as feeble as humans. These are
and they
orcs.
were Saruman's Uruk-hai, I believe.
Yeah, they were like orc on steroids. I'm just surprised there wasn't more fatalities of the Rohirrim, which speaks in volumes to just how tough the Rohirrim are.
Yeah.
Because you can't break down details. It isn't like the Rohirrim come riding in out at the night, right? From the night into the Uruk-hai camp. Everything freeze frames as a horse rider Rohirrim guy comes in and just freeze frames and gives their stats just to let you know how powerful and skilled these people are.
Right.
They can't do that, so it just unfolds as it does, and you, the viewer, just have to piece that together.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was not trying to. I was just like, wow, they're getting wiped out, and I totally bought into Merry and Pippin getting wiped out right along with them.
Oh, I thought for sure that one scene where the horse come down and then split into another scene. I thought for sure that was the end of Pippin. I thought, he's done.
Yeah, and they tried to trot Merry the rest of the way. I think, well, we got one of them anyway.
Because, I mean, that horse was up, and there's Pippin, and split, cut scene, and then they come back to it, and that's when it shows Aragorn tracking them, where he's seeing the flashbacks of what of the scene that happened with Merry and Pippin, how they got away. Into Fangorn Forest.
Yeah, but then that's when the next day, Aragorn and the rest of them, run into the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
They get a quick rundown of what happened the night before. Our trio heroes, now given horses by the Rohirrim, gallop over there to look at the aftermath to see if they can find any trace of Merry and Pippin. Scavenging through there to even further lead us, the audience, on to believe by finding one of the ivory belts that they were cooked in along with them.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, they were really upset. Aragorn kicking the damn stones and screaming and
well, it turns out that Aragorn kicked one of the Uruk-hai helmets.
oh, the helmets, yeah.
And in real life, in the extras of that, we come to learn that he broke his toe. And of the many takes they took of the scene of Aragorn kicking that helmet, the one that was actually kept in the theatrical cut was the one that the one he busted his toe, and that scream was because he was actually in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And there's Peter relishing the fact that he had channeled it to such a professional degree that he used it in his performance. And now we get to see it every time we watch it. He actually broke his toe on that.
Well, I think I'd have kept that too. If I was a director.
So then, Aragorn, he does his ranger thing and unravels the mystery of what really happened to Merry and Pippin. Turns out they didn't die, and they ran into which forest was that?
That was Fangorn.
Fangorn. And so now they're running for their lives in Fangorn, and
yeah.
Now our hero team's going after them.
Well, now the orc ran them into the Fang. They ran from the orcs, but that one orc, was it an orc or a goblin? It followed them in. It was an orc. Followed them in and, was threatening to eat them. And so they're hiding, and then they went up the tree and they're like, climb the trees. And anyhow, they think they lost the orc. And then, he grabs Merry and pulls him down out of the tree, and he lands on his back, and Pippin's up in there, and it wakes up the tree, and he gives out a groan, and looks at Pippin, and Pippin's, in all hysteria about Merry. And then Pippin looks up at the tree, and he's like, oh, shit. Well, he looks down, he looks up, not thinking anything of it until he looks down and he's like, wait a minute. And his face was priceless. I loved that scene. And he is taken back and almost falls out of the tree himself. And then I like the part where, he says to Merry not to encourage the tree. Don't encourage it, Merry. Don't encourage it. Right.
Okay, so then Merry and Pippin get dumped off on the ground, and then they're looking up at the White Wizard, who we're all led to believe at that time is still Saruman. And it cuts away. So Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they go in and after the Merry and Pippin. And then Legolas runs out in front and stops, and Aragorn's all like, what do you see? And that's when Legolas was saying about how the White Wizard approaches. Aragorn saying we must be quick. Don't let him speak. He'll put a spell on us. And anyway, so they try to do combat with the White Wizard. The White Wizard in all of his glory, deflects the arrow, explodes the flying axe, and superheats the blade.
Yeah.
Where's all that? Powers? Yeah, where's all that stuff later? The cool stuff.
Yeah, where's all them powers at later when he's fighting at
anywhere?
Yeah, anywhere.
When he's fighting anywhere, why isn't all this stuff going around? Anyway, and so they did the double over voices where they had Saruman and Gandalf both say the same lines. Where at the beginning it favored Saruman, and towards the end it was Gandalf's voice.
Right.
Aragorn demanding that the White Wizard steps forward so they can see him, and it turns out to be Gandalf. He's alive. Everybody, calm down, rest easy. We got Gandalf back. We'll be okay. All right, so now we got our 4 heroes at Rohan trying to break the spell of Saruman over the king. I don't quite understand why everybody was listening to the king. He obviously was incapacitated. Why would
his right hand man,
which is not Wormtongue. I don't know who elected him in office.
No, it was Hamley.
Whoever it was not Wormtongue. But yet, he was speaking on behalf of the king. All right, so the king's obviously under some sort of spell. But from the common person, obviously he's dying. So he's no longer competent to stand as king. It should go to someone else. So,
which would have been next to Ken, and since his son got injured and died, it would have been his nephew.
I don't know. Do you see any problems with political power in Middle Earth? I mean, where does Aragorn's authority as should be king, but he isn't, begin and end? I mean, who was he to step in at the king's moment of decision making when the king of Rohan was actually going to what looked to be like strike down Wormtongue, and Aragorn steps in and says no. I'm just curious as to when it comes to political power. I would imagine the king of Rohan was the authority, and if he felt someone should go, someone who's not even in Rohan stops him. I don't understand why that was okay. But there they are, trying to decide what's going to happen with Rohan. Obviously, Aragorn and Gandalf think that they should stay and fight, but the king doesn't feel like he's like in a defensible position, and gets a little short with Aragorn, saying, "When last I looked."
Yeah.
Did you ever notice how not too many people take Gandalf's, what did he later call it, later on down the line, his counsel? Somehow, I mean, even though Gandalf doesn't really show a lot of his prowess as a wizard in the battles that seem to count most, he does offer counsel. And in that, I mean, he seems to like know things before they ever even happen. I mean, he's like well informed, almost to the point where, well, then why don't you just go ahead and let some of these people in on it instead of just letting it unfold? You seem absolutely certain that, the King of Rohan is going to need your help, Aragorn, before the end.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, if you're that knowledgeable, then you're probably pretty knowledgeable of the fact that you're going to get back in the nick of time with the main body forces of Rohan anyway. So.
Well, he did. He told him, look to the
east
east
or west, north, south.
He'd be coming early that morning. So yeah, he did tell him he'd be back in time.
Anyway, I'm just saying I picked up on that even back then, that he seemed to really he had foreknowledge of things that was going to unfold, yet he wasn't sharing it with anyone, other than the fact he had that kind of knowledge.
Right.
But for me personally, the meat on the plate here is the battle
At Helm's
Deep.
I agree.
It was the choreography was done is it walked you through seamlessly in the battle as to what the Uruk-hai were trying to do and when, and what the forces of the Rohan people with our handful of elves that was sent by Elrond. I just thought that whole thing from beginning to end was a very fulfilling battle that I've never seen before in a movie, and I was like, that was something that I will cherish forever.
I was taken aback by that battle too. I thought that was really good the way they did it, especially how they were throwing the ladders up onto the side there,
and then they had the larger ones later. They had the regular ladders that they were doing at first, and then when they were able to explode that drainage area and go into that section, and everyone retreated further back into the keep, then they got to the larger walls. Fear not, the Uruk-hai had an answer. They had the bigger, longer ladders, and they were still clinging to them as they're being hoisted over. I'm like, wow, they're insane. Okay, something else that happened there that was bound to go down as an adorable moment was when the main gate was being breached, and the king sent Aragorn out to buy them some time to reinforce it, and Aragorn volunteered the services of Gimli. They go out the side passage, and Gimli was saying about, not being able to jump the distance. You'll have to toss me.
Yeah. But before he does that, though, he says, he stops Aragorn and he says, "Don't tell the elf."
Yeah. Again, that was some humor placed in there in a moment of a very intense battle scene that provided a moment of levity and a very tense moment, and it was just wonderfully placed. The humor was right on for the character. That was priceless. That was that was great. That's all I can say. So Aragorn tosses Gimli over there, and then he hops on over there, and those two do manage to somehow, subside the onslaught of the Uruk-hai and give the people inside the keep time to reinforce those doors. And then Legolas throwing down a rope.
Yeah, to hoist up Aragorn and Gimli, which I'm really surprised that Aragorn and Gimli, I know it was meant to be, but I think in reality they'd been shot full of arrows. All them Uruk-hai, 10,000 Uruk-hai. There's a lot of archers among them. I think they would have been, shot down real quick with arrows. Moving on from that to where the trees are taken out, Isengard.
That was great. Hearing the music when Treebeard was saying "Last March of the Ants," and they played that music. I remember back when I was first seeing it, that was even evoking emotion for me. Like, yes, it's clobbering time, and I ooh and awed over every single bit of it. And the only thing I see a problem with it today, standing up to time, is the fire rendering they used on the Balrog. I am aware that they went through some revisions as it was being shot. It seemed like no sooner did they get done with it, Peter was saying they came up with a better software to render fire. So they end up revisiting that. Well, anyway, then comes the two towers, and when the Ents, they catch the one Ent on fire, I was surprised. It seemed like they didn't use the same technology, because that fire to me didn't look very realistic. And I'm just shocked because Peter was so paying attention to detail. And if he was, and yes, back with the Belrog fight, the fire, you had to sell the fire, else it wouldn't have sold the scene.
Right.
But it seemed like, for whatever the reason, the poor ent that got caught on fire, and the fact that Peter was aware enough to that poor ent that was on fire, running him in at the very last minute before they cut away the scene, and it showed that ent running up and bending over to get that fire out. That was that was brilliant, and it just made me love the movie even more. Helm's Deep there at the very end, and now it's down to a handful of fighters left in the deep with all the women and children back in the caves, and now we have the king in what seems to be complete despair, and he figures, this fight is over, as he has his last remaining 8 or so men trying to reinforce that last little door. And Aragorn ends up snapping the king out of it and reinvigorating the king, as in,
one last stance.
Yeah. Ride out and meet them. And, our poor Rohan king's like, for death and glory, and Aragorn reminds him, no, for your people.
Yeah, that are dying. And,
And to the king's credit of Rohan, he did not need a spell he didn't need it to be spelled out for him. He realized what he had to do at that point. He was just reminded who he was. That's all. And to his credit, he was all about going out there and swinging his sword and hacking down as many Uruk-hai as he could before he finally got gunned down too. He had no idea of what was about to happen, whereas at least Aragorn had a clue. So I can see where Aragorn might have gotten his courage. Not to say he didn't have it. He had plenty of it. But I can see where Aragorn was getting his strategy from, and a little bit of courage to do what was done in the movie. And let's just remember that the King Rohan did not have that knowledge. And when the king decided he agreed with Aragorn, let's go do this, he did that because he wanted to do it for his people.
Right. I agree. Yeah, excellent king.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And that's when we as the audience was let in on some of what Aragorn was thinking, because that's when he looked at the window and seen the light coming through, and then you heard the previous words of Gandalf, saying something to the tune of "Look for my coming at first light, at dawn, look to the east," or whatever direction that was.
Third or fourth day or something.
Yeah, exactly. and I can still remember thinking to myself, "Oh yeah, I know it's coming. Let's do this." I know it's coming, but I've never seen it before, and I know this is going to be a spectacle. How's it going to go? Is this going to be done? I know it's going to be awesome, but to what level? Let's see it. My brain couldn't process what it was about to see. It was just, I remember my brain getting really excited. It was about to happen.
Yeah. And
then we get it. Gimli, surprisingly enough, I guess I understand now why, but at the time, even at the time, I was taken out of it a little bit when I seen Gimli being the one to run up and sound the horn. It wasn't until I thought about it, and because there was no in the making of things why Gimli was chosen. This is all me coming to the realization of he, even though he would tell you he was a horseman, a rider, he wasn't, and he really wouldn't have served much of a purpose, not being able to control a horse while swinging his axe.
Right.
It would have looked good, but it wouldn't have served the story, because it would have been all fan service and not what would have happened. So there they go busting out there, and they're just hacking things up. Now in hindsight, they were letting a lot of Uruk-hai go because they were just running and swatting at what they could get, which left a lot of Uruk-hai there with almost absolutely now nobody guarding the back door. Nobody.
I thought it was really cool though how they all put up the stakes, whatever you want to call them, things, as Gandalf spears as Gandalf and the Rohan.
Well, wait, stop, save that thought, hold that thought, because now they're running out onto that landing, that ramp just beyond the gate, and whenever the king and all of them stop to look up at Gandalf, surprisingly enough, all the Uruk-hai must have too, because they had time to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He stops and looks up, and
they stop.
All of them? I mean, there's still thousands of Uruk-hai there. Don't you think some of them
would have kept fighting?
Yeah, it's blood rage for them. They don't care about a singular white horse on top of a hill. If you're going to let your guard down, I'm going to mutilate you.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised. I'm just surprised. But that's in hindsight. At the time, I totally bought into it. I didn't realize that everyone just suddenly just stopped and turned. All umpteen thousand that was left. Or whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. Then there's Gandalf sitting all proud, and the king stands alone. And then you hear, not alone. Rohirrim! And then you see all these horses show up on top of the hill. And I know I was watching a movie. I knew it was a movie. But I must admit, my chest popped way out because I knew that the odds were now even. And now the humans man was going to be able to show these Uruk-hai what they can do if they had at least close to equal numbers. And then they all started their trot down that steep hill.
That was pretty exciting.
And there wasn't much of a fight after that.
No, I was just going to say that then the battle ended.
All right, so it was a great part 2 to the trilogy. We absolutely loved it. And we hope you enjoyed reliving some of it with us. And if, like always, if you liked what you've seen, please feel free to click that like button and a thumbs up. And by all means, subscribe. We're just a fledgling beginning YouTube channel. And we do have lots of things we want to continue talking about. So thanks for coming. We appreciate you hanging out. And we hope to see you here next week.
I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. See you later.